Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our first of 8 webinars on CVI. I would like to introduce our speakers. Professor Amanda Lewick has been in the field of visual impairment for over 40 years, providing direct service, training educational professionals, and conducting research and development activities related to individuals with visual impairments in the U.S. and abroad. Her numerous publications related to visual impairments include Vision in the Brain, Understanding Cerebral Visual Impairment in Children with co-editor Gordon Dutton, Functional Vision, A Practitioner's Guide to Evaluation and Intervention Development Guidelines for Infants and Visual Impairments, a guidebook for early intervention, with co-authors Dr. Deborah Chen and Elizabeth Hartman. The CVI Companion Guide with Doctors Chen and Hartman, coordinated with their earlier development guidelines manual. Dr. Lewick is a professor emeritus at San Francisco State University. She is joined today by Elizabeth Hartman, who is an associate professor of education at LaSalle University and a co-lecturer of T560, Universal Design for Learning at Harvard's Graduate School of Education. In her research, she examines teacher implementation of universal design learning and how UDL is enacted to teach learners with multiple disabilities. She is a teacher of students with visual impairment and deafblindness and currently co-editing a book for the American Printing House for the Blind on the early intervention of infants and toddlers with CVI. Thank you, Amanda and Elizabeth, for joining us today.
Thank you, Jen.
I want to welcome everybody to this first webinar in a series of 8 webinars. I wanted to mention to everybody that each webinar will build upon the preceding webinar and will go deeper and deeper into CVI as each webinar unfolds. I'd like to thank Dr. Hartman for being on this webinar with me. We've collaborated on several books together, very knowledgeable. And Dr. Hartman is going to, let's see, I've got to get this. This is our agenda for today, but Dr. Hartman is going to monitor the Q&A, and we'll be having some Q&As throughout the webinar and have a final Q&A where we'll hopefully have a little time to field some of your questions that have been coming throughout the webinar. The agenda is, first we'll do a quick overview of CVI, talk about knowing what to look for with CVI, and talking about the CVI profile throughout this whole series of webinars, talk about the subgroups of children who have CVI, and also the introduction to the potential manifestations of CVI, which we'll delve more deeply into as we go through the webinar series. Liz, if you want to talk a little bit about contributing to the conversation.
Sure. So hi, I'm Dr. Liz Hartman, and my main role today will be to help you in the chat and the Q&A throughout our series. And today we'll be providing questions to help engage you in the presentation. As you feel willing and able, please feel free to engage with me. You can ask me questions in either place. The Q&A will be a place we stop 2 or 3 times throughout this presentation to just ask you about your work and the students with CVI that you experience in your day-to-day practice. Also note too that in participating, you can choose to be anonymous or not. It's up to you. You can also ask a question to me in the Q&A, and we have that red box highlighting the place where you ask those questions. When questions come up and you see that people are responding, you can choose to comment on a question as well. All right, back to you, Amanda.
Okay. Thank you, Liz. And before we begin, what we're going to ask you to do throughout the whole webinar is to think about a child who has CVI, and later maybe think about many of your children who have CVI. What do you hope to learn that will help you teach this child? And please share that in the Q&A. We'll be presenting information throughout the webinar, and think about how the information that we present applies to this child. So without further ado, we're going to start with the webinar. And the first part is a quick overview of CVI. Now, everybody who's, I'm sure, attending this webinar knows at this point that vision involves more than the eyes, and vision is processed in many parts of the brain. So in the early days, it was thought that vision was processed in this part of the brain, and that was it. But in order to understand the signals that come to the occipital lobe, which is in the back part of the brain, signals go out through networks throughout the brain so that the child or the adult can understand what they're seeing. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about visual processing. So if you think about a camera, it's not just the image that goes to the camera, it's the way that the image is processed by the person who is looking at the image of the camera. So in the early days, it was thought that cortical visual impairment was the final definition of problems with brain-based visual impairment. And that was damage to the visual system between this part of the brain. Here are the eyes. Here are the networks going from the eyes to the brain. And they go through a little place called the lateral geniculate nucleus. And it was thought that problems with cerebral cortical visual impairment came about with issues from the lateral geniculate nucleus to the primary visual cortex. But lots of research has occurred since all those initial understandings of cortical visual impairment. And we now know that there are many associative areas of the brain. This is a diagram that simplifies it into networks from the occipital lobe going to the posterior parietal lobe called the dorsal stream. Some people call it the dorsal network. And from the occipital lobe to the temporal lobes. And some people call that the ventral stream or the ventral network. There are other networks throughout the brain, and this is a simplified diagram. One of the reasons that we use it is that it does help in understanding some of the issues that children with cerebral visual impairment have. So one reason that this simplified method can be helpful is that we can think about the ventral stream as the what system and the dorsal stream as the where system. So the ventral stream tells you what's going on, and the ventral stream says where it's going on, and then how the child can interact with whatever that image is there. And we'll explain a little bit more about this as we move along. But cerebral visual impairment is more of an umbrella term. Some people are now calling it cerebral visual impairments rather than just cerebral visual impairment. And this can include impairment in processing and analyzing information. Visual perceptual impairments can exist with typical ophthalmological dysfunctions related to acuity, field, and ocular motor issues, but they can also be the main clinical expression of CVI in children with normal or near normal visual acuity. So you can have problems that are brain-based in addition to problems that are ocular-based. You can have one, the other, or both. And things start to get complicated. And that's why there's been so much attention to understanding CVI, and we'll be calling it CVI mostly through this set of webinars until the medical community has more definitive definitions for everything. But let's talk about knowing what to look for. So if a child has a dorsal or a ventral stream issue, it's important to be on the lookout for other manifestations of dorsal or ventral stream issues that might also be present. And I mentioned to you that these are not the only manifestations of CVI, but it gives a starting point for things to look at for children who have CVI. So dorsal stream dysfunction is immediate, it's an automatic system, and it's used to appraise and move through the visual world. Dorsal stream issues are more common in children than ventral stream issues, and dorsal stream functions are unconscious. You're not aware that you have a dorsal stream issue unless someone points it out to you, and you may not be aware of what's happening when it's happening. Dorsal stream ranges in character and severity. So people with dorsal stream issues can have a range of visual acuity and visual field. And it's also found with varying degrees of cerebral palsy. It's very common in children with periventricular white matter damage and preterm births. Now, we talked about knowing what to look for. So I'm going to go through this a little carefully, because if you have a child or an adult with one dorsal stream issue, and again, we can call it a dorsal network issue, it's important to be on the lookout for other manifestations of dorsal stream issues. Now, the person is probably not going to have all of these, and they may only have the one that was initially noticed. But in doing any kind of assessment of people, it's important to rule out these others to be sure that they're not also in play. So a common one is impaired visual search. And if a child has impaired visual search, you can also look for inaccurate visual guidance of movement of the lower or the upper limbs, impaired auditory search and localization, impaired ability to split visual attention, impaired performance in cluttered or patterned environments, distress in crowded environments, such as going into a crowded cafeteria or a busy grocery store or a busy movie theater or shopping center, impaired perception of speed of fast-moving objects and rapid facial expressions. And this is something that people really need to be aware of, that we always thought that, with cortical visual impairment, you needed movement in order for the visual system to kick in. That may be true, but it may also be true that if objects are moving too rapidly for certain people, that they may have trouble seeing those objects that are moving. And that speed of movement is individually determined. It would be different for each person. There can be a lower field dysfunction, and this can be very common in children who were born prematurely. And impaired ability to split attention between the senses, such as talking and watching at the same time, listening and watching at the same time. Now, ventral stream dysfunction is conscious recognition and an orientation system which we are aware of and which processes more slowly. The ventral stream is damaged less frequently than the dorsal stream in children, and ventral stream issues are usually associated with some dorsal stream dysfunction. There can be difficulty with recognition due to visual memory issues, so that a child with ventral stream dysfunction may have difficulty recognizing faces. They may identify strangers as people who they know or not recognize people who they know. They may have difficulty recognizing facial expressions, shapes and objects and their alignment, navigating inside and outside, and they may not know what they're looking at in order to orient, and that would be why they get lost. And this ventral stream dysfunction can vary in degree and severity. So here's a kitty. Happens to be my kitty Snowflake. And someone with CVI, a child, might not understand that this is a cat. They may just focus right on her bright green eyes. They may not be able to differentiate her whiskers. And we don't know what that person sees unless they can explain it to us. Now, adults who have some kind of acquired brain damage can tell you what they see and what they know is missing, but children can't. And that's why we have to be vigilant in understanding the expressions of CVI. A person with CVI may see these lines, black and white stripes, as squiggly. They may see this fork, spoon, and knife as one object. They may see this piece of wedgewood as several objects. Now, this is simultaneous nausea, and I want to explain simultaneous nausea to you pretty carefully. This is through the grace of CVI Scotland, allowed us to use these photos. And this is a concert, an outdoor concert. And this, on the slide at the left, is what a person with typical vision would see at that concert. This is what, on the slide at the right, someone with CVI might see. And this was taken by an adult with CVI, and she explained what she saw and then showed it in this photo, where the only person in this whole thing who's in focus is that one gentleman, and some of the people around him are in focus, but the rest is a bit of a blur. Now, I just learned from CVI Scotland, and they've just supplied these other photos, that we may intuitively think that here's a picture on the left that someone with typical vision would see, that someone with CVI would focus right on the musician in the middle. But that may not be true. Look at the slide on the right. And someone with CVI may actually hone into a certain portion of the picture that they are interested in, that they are seeking. For example, if a child is looking for a parent who wears a certain kind of outfit, they may just find that person or look for that person and find it. They may take different scans until they find that person. Another way that CVI is manifesting, and I want to mention this to you, is they can have blind sight. And that's awareness of moving targets, lights, and colors in a blind area of the visual field. This can be conscious or subconscious, and it's difficult to determine in children due to their young age and co-occurring impairments. So what they found in some studies is that children who were thought to be totally blind, they were able to recognize moving targets coming in from their peripheral visual field. The problem is that there's the process of extinction, where if the targets were brought in from that same portion of the visual field over and over again, the children would stop seeing them. The targets would have to be brought in from different areas of their visual field. Another thing to mention to you is Balint syndrome. Rudolf Balint was a Hungarian psychologist who in 1909 related a case of bilateral posterior parietal lobe damage. And we can all maybe remember that this is associated with dorsal stream damage at the top of the head, top of the brain. Balint syndrome is associated with a group of difficulties, and it's called Balint syndrome when these difficulties are severe. And this is simultaneous nausea, which I just explained to you, which is a spatial disorder of visual attention, where a person can't attend to more than one or a few objects at a time. Optic ataxia, which is poor visual guidance of movement, or the upper or lower limbs. That is difficulty reaching for targets. And apraxia of gaze, which is inability to move the eyes to a new position based upon visual cues. And with this, the eye movement system, the ocular motor system, is intact. And the reason there might be apraxia of gaze is that if you can't see something, you can't move your eyes to it. And there may be different degrees of Balint syndrome, particularly in children with cerebral palsy. So I want to show you another manifestation of CVI. This is a YouTube video which you can access, and I'm going to try to bring it up for you now if I'm lucky. And here we go.
The last thing I remember is lying here in my own bed. And I vaguely remember being taken to the hospital. And then after that, I don't remember anything. When I woke up, it was completely black. Absolutely black. When Marina Channing was 29 years old, she was left blind by a stroke. My eyes are perfect, but it's the damage that the stroke did to my brain. It had completely decimated her primary visual cortex, that area at the back of the brain that processes all the information from your eyes. But then, a little while later, I was giving Stephanie a bath and, running the tap, running the water. I see the water moving. But then they went and told all the doctors. They said it's her imagination. And then I started seeing the rain coming down from the sky, the windscreen wipers on, the steam coming from a coffee cup. And though she couldn't see her daughter, I would see her ponytail moving left to right. It seemed to be things that were moving, but nobody believed me. She visited neurologists in Canada who showed her this weird shifting grid. I actually started crying because I could see it. It turned out there are these modules in the brain that are specialized for processing higher order aspects of vision, like recognizing faces or letters or motion. And it seemed that in Marina's brain, the information coming through the eyes had found a way to bypass that broken primary visual cortex and still get out to that motion module, a part of her brain that was apparently still intact. It's just amazing what I can see. I can avoid obstacles and fill the kettle. I'm seeing colours better, but I can't see people. I don't see your face. I mean, you're there, but I just see the shadow. That compartmental nature of vision that may have been her blessing is also proving to be a quiet curse. Just now and again, it hits me, why can't I see my daughter's face and who does she look like? And it's so frustrating. And then I think about it for a while and then I think, oh well, at least I'm here.
Okay, so this is an example of blind sight where the occipital lobes were damaged, her eyes were fine. She could not see, but she could see. She could see certain things that were activated by motion. So I'm going to move on. And think about a child with CVI. Here's our first Q&A session. Does this child's CVI manifest as dorsal stream issues, ventral stream issues, both, or other? And have fun with the chat. Dr. Hartman's watching.
I'll see you guys on the Q&A. I'm typing as fast as I can.
There's a lot of you out there. So there are 3 subgroups of children with CVI. And the type of CVI that manifests varies from child to child, and it depends on the location, the extent, and the age of onset of the damage. In the case of the woman who could see her child's ponytail, one part of her brain, the motor section in front of the occipital cortex, had enough processing capabilities that she was able to see. This may not be true in the case of someone else who had the same, where this happened at a different age, where it affected a different part of her brain. The 3 subgroups of children, and it affects children of all ages, are children with profound visual impairment due to CVI. Now, when we first started thinking about CVI, our field was looking at children who had profound visual impairment. They couldn't see, and we didn't understand why they couldn't see, and we wanted to understand, and we called that cortical visual impairment. These children are still there, but there are also children with CVI who have functionally useful vision and cognitive challenges. And those children can see, they have cognitive challenges, but they may not be identified as having CVI, and things can be attributed to other things, such as developmental delay, cognitive challenge only, behavioral issues, learning disability, developmental motor coordination problems. Then there are children with CVI who have functionally useful vision and who work at or near the expected academic level of their age group. These are the children that we're not fully identifying at this point because they're in the schools, they're doing sort of okay, but they're having problems and nobody knows to look for CVI. They're starting to look for it in some areas of Europe at this point, and hopefully we'll be getting better and better at assessing children who have functionally useful vision but work at or near the expected academic level. Again, many children in the last 2 subgroups are not included in the demographic data. So the prevalence of CVI, we know it's high, but it's likely to be much higher than typical estimates. And those children in those last subgroups may not be identified for CVI, and their academic, their school, their social, their developmental problems may be attributed to other things. They may have these other things, but they may also have CVI. So think about a child who has CVI. What subgroup do they fit into? Dr. Hartman, you're on. Next question.
And I'll just quickly add, a lot of people are already commenting in the chat that they're seeing quite a few children who have both.
Wonderful, wonderful. Keep thinking about your children. Now, we're going to move quickly into potential manifestations of CVI, and I'm going to go a little more quickly at this point. Dr. Hartman, Dr. Deborah Chen, and I have been working on CVI Companion Guide for the American Printing House for the Blind. And in this companion guide, we've come up with manifestations of CVI called the CVI Profile. We've identified 16 overall functional categories that form a CVI profile, but these categories can be further subdivided into more than 50 possible consequences of CVI. And I want to mention that we're not the only people who are thinking that there's a need for a CVI profile. And you may see other CVI profiles with that name or similar name coming out. Look at them all. There are so many manifestations of CVI, and more are being identified all the time. So it's important to have all of these tools at your disposal to help in your understanding of your students with CVI. So in the CVI profile that we've developed, our 16 categories, and I'm just going to read them off very, very quickly, are clarity of vision, area of vision, following people or objects visually due to eye movement limitations or visual field restrictions, locating people or objects visually and visual search capabilities, response to faces, recognition of objects or symbols, response to movement, accuracy of visual motor planning and control, imitation and copying, color, depth perception, and this is depth perception that's different from stereopsis, illumination problems or issues, responses to sound. Many children with CVI have auditory processing issues, response to the environment, the effects of visual novelty, and response time. Now, one thing that I want to emphasize, and I'm presenting this a little early and we'll be going through this later in more detail, is the data collection for evidence for these behaviors in the CVI profile. And we provide a CVI profile form, but I want you to notice the first row of this form. It collects evidence from a variety of sources: medical records, interview and history taking, formal and informal assessment, and evidence from observation. And evidence from observation has to be in different environments because children with CVI perform differently in different environments. And we'll be going through all the subcategories of CVI in another webinar, but let me just show you the clarity of vision. Here are some parts of that: visual acuity, contrast sensitivity, and accommodation, which is performance of tasks at a close distance. Now, some people feel that these things are not affected by problems with damage to the visual brain, but that's not true. You can have no ocular problems, and these clarity of vision issues can be affected by brain-based visual impairment. Now, one of the things that you have to determine in doing interventions is, what do you do with the information that you collect? Some children may only have a couple of manifestations of CVI. Some may have a lot. And you have to determine if you want to monitor it, target it for instruction, or target it for accommodations. And we'll be talking about that in subsequent webinars. I want to show you the last thing that we're going to talk about today. And this pulls a lot of what we've been talking about together. And this is a video by a young man who has CVI named Alfie Fox. And I'm going to show you this on YouTube.
Alfie Fox presents a film for you care a bit. My name is Alfie Fox. I am 17 years old. I sustained a brain injury when I was 2 days old. This has left me with cerebral palsy, CVI, audio processing and sensory disorder, speech and language needs, and epilepsy. Cerebrovisual impairment. One of the ways that my brain injury affects me. Cerebrovisual impairment is when your brain doesn't process what your eyes see. I have CVI due to neonatal hyperglycemia. Both my occipital lobes are damaged. This film is about how I see. I need lots of time to process everything I see. I need big writing and big spaces between words and sentences. I need everything to be high contrast. I prefer to see color pictures rather than black and white. I find it difficult to see the hands on a clock. I can tell the time on a digital clock. When the floor changes from light to dark, it feels like stepping into a black hole. I do not see curves. I need someone to tell me there is a curve. Yellow lines help a bit with contrast, but I have some field loss and don't see down. I don't see downstairs. It is like being on the edge of a cliff. I want to play football and basketball with friends, but I can't see when they move quickly. I don't play team games or with friends. I wish games were played like this, nice and slow. I can't see moving traffic. I can't tell if they are moving or parked. I get anxious in car parks. CVI affects me socially. I can feel isolated. I struggle to see faces in a crowd. I sometimes cannot recognize faces, even those I know well, like my family. I have no depth perception, which makes getting around difficult. 3D films don't work for me. I may have CVI, but it doesn't stop me from pursuing my hobbies. Like producing this amazing film for your entertainment. Plus, I get you rare cool sunglasses all the time. I look like I see, but I don't see what you see.
So what I want you to do now is think about a child with CVI. We have gone a little over, but we can go over a few more minutes. What consequences of CVI will you be looking into because of what you learned today? How does this child experience his or her visual world? And, you know, we'll come back to the Q&A in a second, but in the next webinar, we'll go over the CVI profile in detail. And I also want to tell you that we have references for this webinar at the end of all the slides, and you have access to all the slides. So Liz, if you want to talk about the Q&A for a few minutes, I think we have, 5 minutes where we can do the Q&A. And I'm going to try to figure out how to stop this screen share. There you go. Okay. Hi, Liz.
Hi.
Is Jen coming on?
I'm sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much, Amanda and Liz, for presenting us with this information on CVI. It was really great. I think it was really quality information in our from the questions that those in attendance really appreciated it. I would like to put on the screen now, I'm going to make this a little bigger for everyone, the post survey link, which everyone should have received in an email unless you attended afternoon today, unless you registered afternoon today. And it will ask you for a webinar code, and the code is DAN, D-A-N 289. Again, that's DAN 289. I will put that in the chat box. And there's a QR code. If you hold up your phone, turn on the camera app, and just hold that up to the screen so it has the QR code in there. A little announcement will appear at the top of your phone, and if you touch that, it should take you right to open the survey for you. So thank you again, Amanda and Liz. And the second part of this series will be on April 8th. And we'll be going over the CVI profile. I hope everyone has a great day and that your technology worked. Thanks, everybody.